Clifton Powell spent 35 years building a reputation that felt bulletproof. He played men who didn't flinch, didn't apologize, and never showed a crack in their composure. And then a camera caught him in tears, after what many described as his final sentence. And for a moment, none of that armor mattered to anyone watching. What brought a man like that to that point is not a simple arc. It moves through Washington, D.C. classrooms and New York stage floors and Los Angeles audition rooms, through courtroom testimony and a marriage that collapsed under the weight of a lifestyle he wasn't equipped to manage, through financial ruin and a slow, deliberate comeback built almost entirely on his own terms. This is the account he's started sharing now, openly and without his usual filter. And it tells a different story than the one his filmography suggests. Long before anyone outside his immediate circle knew his name, Powell was a teenager at St. Anthony Catholic School in Washington, D.C., when a live-action production of My Fair Lady planted something in him that wouldn't fade. Not just appreciation for performance, but a recognition that acting was worth pursuing with real discipline. That pull led him first to the Duke Ellington School of the Arts, a performing arts institution where talent wasn't simply acknowledged, but actively pressured to develop, and then to Emerson College in Boston, where he earned a degree in speech and education. The workshops for careers in the arts program he participated in during those years sharpened something that classroom instruction alone couldn't fully address. New York followed graduation, and New York delivered a reality that no amount of training had fully prepared him for. For 10 years, he moved through stage productions and commercials, taking whatever came his way, and filled the financial gaps by working as a speech counselor in summer youth programs. He admitted later that those years were uncomfortable in ways he rarely discussed, that survival ran just beneath the ambition as a constant secondary concern. After a decade of that, he moved to Los Angeles, and the decision wasn't primarily about film. Television was the specific target, something steady enough to finally reduce the pressure that had followed him since leaving school. Los Angeles responded, but gradually. Supporting roles began arriving with more consistency, and his work in Menace to Society and House Party gave him tangible visibility within the film community. Through the 90s, television kept him consistently present, with appearances on Martin, The Sinbad Show, and Matlock, building both his range and his professional reputation. The role that genuinely shifted his trajectory came through the Fox drama series Rock, where his portrayal of Andrew Thompson earned the kind of sustained attention that actually redirects career paths. His work as Jeff Brown in the film Ray then delivered his most critically examined dramatic performance, and brought nominations for both an NAACP Image Award and a Screen Actors Guild Award, placing him among actors who could carry serious material with genuine weight. When Next Friday moved into production, the role of Pinky had already been considered for another actor entirely, someone with a different physical presence and a completely different creative approach. Powell walked into that audition having already decided not to give a reading, but to deliver a full performance, dressed for the role, carrying an energy that felt borderline uncontrollable. And the people in the room, including Ice Cube, saw almost immediately that what he was doing didn't simply interpret the character, but replaced the previous idea of him entirely. The voice came first in how he'd built it, that high-pitched, raspy tone sitting in deliberate contrast to his natural register, making Pinky feel volatile in ways that landed as comedy precisely because they felt genuinely unhinged. The physical restlessness followed, the constant movement, the way he occupied space as if always reacting to something invisible, all of it constructed with the same attention he applied to dramatic work. On set, the energy expanded rather than contracted, because Powell wasn't confined to what was on the page. The scenes with Day carried a tension that felt alive in real time, shaped through improvisation and the kind of unpredictable back and forth that keeps an audience genuinely off balance. The shut-up sequence in the record store grew out of Powell pushing the material past what was scripted, stretching the repetition and the rising pitch until the scene sat right at the edge of falling apart. And that edge was exactly where it became funny. The safe sequence is where a similar thing happened, a moment that should have been straightforward turning into something larger because Powell leaned into it past what the script required. The go-go reference wasn't in the script at all. It came from his own roots in Washington, D.C., a personal detail inserted to give the character something real beneath all the chaos. The film earned nearly $60 million worldwide, against an $11 million budget, and Friday After Next in 2002 brought Pinky back with the same disruptive presence. The comedy work and the dramatic credits existed in separate professional registers, but together they established a range that very few actors at his level had made equally credible in both directions. What Powell was far less willing to discuss publicly for years was the resistance running alongside all of it. When he eventually opened up, the account was direct. He described losing roles not because of his performance history, but because of his complexion, being told by producers on a major television project that he was too dark, that his presence might create discomfort for certain audiences. A McDonald's commercial disappeared for the same documented reason. An agent during that same period reportedly instructed casting offices to avoid submitting African-American actors darker than a specific well-known performer. And Powell understood exactly what that instruction communicated about how the entertainment industry valued him. When his own representation dismissed a project as just another small production without considering what that income meant for someone with a family to support, Powell pushed back immediately, and the relationship ended shortly after. He framed these experiences not as isolated incidents, but as a consistent pattern, one that reflected broader social prejudices operating inside a system that had simply relabeled those prejudices as commercial judgment. The legal matter that surfaced publicly in 2012 traced back to an encounter during 2011. A civil lawsuit filed by a woman using the pseudonym Keonti Myers described events that began at Harrah's Casino, where she worked as a cocktail waitress, before continuing to the International House Hotel in Louisiana, alleging that what began consensually escalated against her wishes the following morning. The complaint sought $75,000 in damages and named assault and battery among its claims. Powell denied the allegations immediately and publicly, stating that no arrest had occurred and that the account being circulated did not reflect what actually happened. After moving through the legal process, the civil case was dismissed for lack of evidence, and his name was cleared within that framework. What the dismissal could not reverse was the damage that had accumulated while the case was active. Opportunities contracted during that window, roles that might have materialized, didn't, and the professional weight of a public allegation operates on its own timeline, independent of what a court eventually concludes. Powell absorbed that reality across several years before the ruling came through. The return to consistent work that followed read as deliberate. Saints and Sinners gave him a recurring role as Rex Pfizer across multiple seasons, while appearances in Black Lightning and The Family Business kept him present on television in meaningful ways. With more than 250 credits accumulated across his career, the reputation he'd built was one of a professional who arrived prepared and delivered without requiring multiple takes, across projects ranging from modest budgets to considerably larger productions. Behind that output, the financial picture told a more strained story. During years when he appeared regularly on screen, he was navigating daily life without reliable transportation, working from a position that didn't match what people assumed about someone with his track record. He acknowledged that understanding how to actually manage money wasn't something that came to him until his early 50s, and by that point a substantial portion of what he'd earned had already left without much structure behind it. The divorce from Kimberly Powell then delivered the most direct financial blow of all, costing him approximately $10 million and returning him to working from necessity rather than from choice. When he discusses the marriage now, in conversations from early 2026, the language carries no softening. He called it the biggest mistake of his life, described infidelity without qualification, and acknowledged that the emotional capacity required to sustain a real partnership simply wasn't something he possessed during those years. Playing characters who radiated authority had not taught him how to exercise it in his own home. and that gap cost him more than any professional setback ever had. The marriage produced 2 children, Maya and Clifton Powell, Jr., and the financial reset that followed the divorce arrived at a point when most people in comparable positions would have been building on what they'd secured rather than starting over. Now at 69, he describes himself as genuinely learning what presence in a relationship actually requires, with a partner he keeps largely out of public view. The mentorship work he's taken on with younger actors navigating the same industry terrain he once crossed without guidance carries those lessons forward purposefully. And the attention he's paying to his son's path reflects someone who no longer wants the patterns of one generation extending into the next. Last Friday remains in development, and whether Pinky returns to it stays officially unanswered. Powell has declined to confirm or deny the possibility, and that silence, given everything connecting him to that franchise across more than 2 decades, carries more weight than a direct answer would. He recently completed work on The North Star, continues across both film and television, and speaks in current interviews with a directness that comes entirely from having already lived through the consequences of most major errors. The entertainment industry that once told him he was too dark to be commercially viable carries his name across more than 250 productions. The courtroom that received serious allegations against him ultimately dismissed them. The marriage that cost him $10 million taught him what 35 years of acting credits never could have. What he's building now moves with more intention and more patience, and for the first time across a very long career, that measured pace appears to be exactly what he's after.